So we can get started.
Okay.
So good morning, everyone, and welcome to our graduate seminar series. We have a new speaker every Friday throughout this semester. My name is Brendan, and I am part of the Agronomy Graduate Student Organization. We put this seminar series together so we can hear science from a new presenter each week. Today we have Teresa presenting to us, and she is going to talk to us about how precision agriculture can assist in, greenhouse gas emission, monitoring those things, and related to nitrogen fertilizers. And so as a reminder, please remember to mute yourself during the presentation, and you can write any questions that you may have in the chat or save them until the end and you can unmute yourself. So with that, I would like to invite Teresa to present to us.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for being here. Today, I will be talking about my master thesis, nitrogen fertilization and the greenhouse gas emissions, exploring the potential of mitigation through precision agriculture. My advisor was Professor Pierpaolo Ruggero, and my co-advisors were Dr. Davide Camarano and Dr. Laura Mula. Something about me. I'm a PhD student in Italy. It was founded in 1562, Department of Agronomy. My university is in Sardinia, a region of Italy, in the middle of Mediterranean Sea. It is an island, and it is mainly composed by extensive and cows for meat production. My bachelor thesis was about the improvement of pastures. For my master thesis, thanks to the Erasmus at the James Sutton Institute to do my internship at Dundee. Some background information about the reasons for my project. It is estimated that in 2050, the world population will be around 10 billion of people. Agricultural systems are therefore asked to satisfy the increasing global demand for food and fiber to ensure food security for a growing population. In the last century, the mechanization helped farmers on increasing agricultural production. In this picture, it showed the evolution of the amount of people a farmer can feed. In 1960, were 26 people. In 2017, 155. In 2050, they will be 265. The intensification of the current agricultural systems in terms of inputs and outputs led to increased concerns regarding the impact on the environment. This picture of FAO showed the emissions in carbon dioxide equivalent divided for all the commercial sector. In the x-axis, we have the timeline of 20 years, since 1990 until 2010. In y-axis, we have the gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent emitted. The purple bars are the agricultural sector. As you can see, agricultural trend is constant, while the energy sector has a greater impact on the environment. Digital agriculture plays an important role in reducing agricultural production variability and environmental sustainability to increase yields, reduce costs, and contribute to maintain a cleaner environment with a global challenge in the context of climate change. Digital agriculture is a component of Internet of Things, and it is composed by precision agriculture, so quantify and analyze the spatial and temporal variability, prescriptive agriculture, site-specific application of agronomic inputs, big data, the information from complex data set, and enterprise agriculture, economic decision-making, and analysis. However, these technologies will not replace the essential role of farmers and agronomists. Digital agriculture plays an important role in supplying data to the operators, but the human decision-making will still be an important factor in monitoring and identifying strategic options. Among the disciplines that are most changing the approach with the environmental impact, crop growth and simulation models play a role of primary importance. They can be useful tools to analyze the interaction between soil, plant, and atmosphere. The models need the specific input data to simulate the system. So the collection is the starting point for processing and synthesizing information, which will be translated into information for the minimum data set of input to run the model. Using crop models, we can build what-if scenarios to assess different conditions of productivity and environmental impact in relation to the management and the initial conditions. The hypothesis of my project was to assess if the application of the crop simulation models to the precision agriculture can provide a substantial contribution to design effective and efficient spring barley cropping system in Scotland, and if they are an efficient tools in the decision support process. The objective of this study was to analyze yield and greenhouse gas emissions scenarios related to the nitrogen fertilization and spatial variability. The spring barley cultivar used for the experiment was Concerto. 2 experimental sites were managed during the 2018 growing season. One plot experiment at the James Sutton Institute and another one in a commercial farm. The plot experiment compares 2 factors, irrigation and fertilization, each with 2 levels. So 1 irrigated plot without nitrogen, irrigated plot with nitrogen, rain-fed plot without nitrogen, and rain-fed plot with nitrogen. The soil texture was loamy according to the USDA soil survey, and climate records with information on daily solar radiation, air minimum and maximum temperature, and rainfall were available from 1964 to 2018. Plant samples at 3 different times were also collected. The field scale experiment were of 11 hectares. Homogeneous yielding zones were identified using 6 consecutive years of winter wheat and spring barley yield maps. Yield zones were divided in 2 different zones, stable and unstable. The unstable yielding zones were also divided into high, medium, and low. Anthrax of 23 points was identified, and in each point, soil samples were collected at the 3 different depths, 0, 30, 30, 60, and 69 centimeters. In most of the soil samples, the 0, 30 centimeter layer texture was classified as loamy according to the USDA. In the 30, 60, and 69 centimeters layer, the texture of all the management zones ranged from clay to sandy loam. Overall, in the 0, 30 centimeters layer, the soil had between 40 to 60% of sand and less than 20% of clay across all the zones. The soil organic carbon was close to 1% in the 0, 30 centimeter layer and dropped to 0.34 and less than 0.1 in the 30, 60, and 60 and 90 centimeter layer, respectively, with the exception of high yielding zone. DSSAT model was used for this study. The input dataset used for the calibration included daily weather, soil characteristic, and management data. The crop model was calibrated for phenology, anthesis, and maturity, and the crop biomass under optimum conditions, using the experimental plots at the AGSO with the fertilization and irrigation. The phenology was calibrated by adjusting the parameters of vernalization and photoperiod sensitivity, while the biomass accumulations was calibrated by adjusting the phylochrome parameter. The calibration obtained from the plots with the fertilization and irrigation was used to simulate the barley in all the management zones. The objective was to evaluate yields and emissions by adopting increasing doses of nitrogen inputs. So this model was run for different yielding zones with an incremental amount of nitrogen: 0, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, and 140 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, with a daily weather data set of 35 years since 1984 until 2018. The simulations were conducted in continuum, but with the restoration of the initial condition for the soil per each year. The simulation for the concerto cultivar calibration was very satisfactory. As shown in the figure, the simulated anthesis state was only 1 day different from the observed one. The simulated maturity date was the same as the observed one, and the observed grain yield was 3,500 kilograms of dry matter per hectare, with a standard deviation of 500. And the simulated grain yield was only 240 kilograms of dry matter per hectare, greater than the observed one. So was within the confidence level. The simulated and measured the cumulative biomass indicate in the first and in the third sample data values are underestimated, but that could be explained because the model states the potential production without consider stress, pest disease, without consider pest disease or competition with weeds. The management zone simulations allowed to evaluate the effect of the different nitrogen fertilization. In this figure, on the x-axis, we have the fertilization rate in kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, while in the y-axis, we have the percentage of variation versus N120. That was the business as usual of the farmer. In the high yielding zones, with a fertilization rate of 80 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, so less than 33% compared to the business as usual, the grain yield decreased on an average by only 5%, while the nitrogen leached and the nitrogen dioxide emitted decreased by 41 and 50% respectively. A similar behavior was observed in all the management zones, and these outputs were useful to optimize the nitrogen fertilization, either to nitrogen dioxide emissions and nitrogen leached per unit grain yield or per unit fertilization rate. Therefore, ATN treatment was chosen as more sustainable fertilization rate with negligible grain reduction, less than 5% across all the management zones. These figures show how the yield decreases with decreasing nitrogen fertilization rate. In the x-axis, we have the treatment in kilos of nitrogen per hectare, while in the y-axis, we have on the left, the yield in kilograms per hectare, and on the right, the nitrogen leached and the nitrogen emitted in kilogram per hectare and hectogram per hectare, respectively. However, the three trends follow a different pattern, which indicate that substantial reduction in the level of nitrogen fertilization would result in a small decrease of grain yield and the relevant decrease in nitrogen dioxide emissions and nitrogen leaching. These figures show spatial and temporal variability of yield. In the x-axis, we have the treatment in kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, while in the y-axis, we have the coefficient of variation. As is shown in the figure, increasing nitrogen fertilization rate, it will reduce the spatial variability because the crops will not have nutritional stress, but it will increase the temporal variability due to the weather season variations. In conclusion, DSSAT proved to be an effective tool for the simulation of crop system of spring barley in Scotland. It was possible to simulate different quantitative responses to different levels of nitrogen inputs to optimize agronomic inputs and evaluate the effectiveness in terms of yield and nutrient loss. The model's outputs were useful to study the space and time variability associated with potential environmental implications. But given the relatively homogeneous field in conditions in terms of soil types, we did not observe substantial improvement by giving a site-specific nitrogen fertilization. Thanks.
Thank you, Teresa. That was great. Does anyone have any questions? Last call. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, I would once again like to thank Teresa for presenting, and
Yep.
I hope to see you all at our next seminar.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Teresa. Great presentation.
Thank you too, Anna.